Hi, I'm going to show you how to use OxEd's LanguageScreen app, a fast and accurate way to assess and track the oral language skills of children between 3.5 and 8 years of age. Over the next few minutes, I'll show you how to conduct an assessment and view the results. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to assume you already have an OxEd account and have installed LanguageScreen on a tablet or smartphone. Your school has an active LanguageScreen trial or subscription, and you've registered some pupils for assessment and have their unique QR codes to hand. I'm going to open the LanguageScreen app on my device. Before I start an assessment, I'm going to check the volume is turned up so we can hear the instructions and audio in the tests. When you assess a child with LanguageScreen for real, you'll need a quiet space in which you can sit side by side and they can concentrate without distractions. Now I'm going to select Start an Assessment and then Scan QR Code. This is where you can scan a practice code if you would like to do a test run to familiarise yourself with the assessment. You'll find a practice code at the top of the QR codes list for your class. Or if you're ready to get started, you can scan the QR code for the pupil you want to assess. You can scan the code from screen or from paper. The device needs to be online when you scan the code and when you upload the scores at the end of the assessment, but the assessment itself can be conducted offline, which can be helpful in schools where Wi-Fi coverage is patchy. I'm going to scan the code for one of the pupils I registered. Here I'll check that the randomly generated code name matches the one shown on the sheet for the pupil I want to assess, to make sure that I'm assessing the right pupil and their assessment scores will be uploaded to their profile and not someone else's. A LanguageScreen assessment takes between 10 and 15 minutes and is made up of 4 tests, which involve looking at what's shown on the screen or listening to what's being said aloud by the app or by the adult conducting the assessment. This one is a looking test, as you can tell by the eye at the top there. So during this test, you'll be showing the pupil the screen. This is a test of expressive vocabulary. In other words, do they know what they are looking at and can they say what it's called? Do they have the vocabulary to express themselves? Let's hear how it works.
I'm going to show you some pictures on the screen. I want to find out how many you know. Tell me what each picture is. Let's start.
If you prefer, you can read out the instructions yourself. Let's start the test. You'll notice that there's a cross and a tick at the bottom of the screen. Show the pupil the picture and use the tick and cross to mark their responses. Did they name it correctly? The controls are positioned so you can hold the device and discreetly cover them with your thumbs if you prefer not to reveal the marks you're giving. The Acceptable Answers button at the bottom of the screen shows you the correct answer as well as some common answers that should be marked as incorrect. If you accidentally mark an answer as incorrect when it was correct or vice versa, you can use the back button to go back one item and mark it again. There are 24 pictures in this test, which have been carefully selected by our research team to provide the maximum amount of diagnostic information, as is the case with all our tests. But if your pupil gets 8 items wrong in a row, the test will end early, as our data tells us it's very unlikely they'll get any more right after that point, and we don't want them to get discouraged if they are struggling. The assessment will automatically move on to the next test, and a similar principle is applied in all the tests within the assessment. If you get interrupted for any reason, you can exit the assessment using the button at the top right of the screen and resume it later by rescanning the QR code on the same device. The assessment will resume from the beginning of the last test you began. Now let's move on to Test 2, Listening Comprehension, which unsurprisingly involves listening, as indicated by the ear icon. This test assesses a child's ability to follow a simple story and remember the details.
I'm going to play you 3 stories. At the end of each story, I will ask you some questions about it. Listen carefully, because I want to find out how much you can remember.
There are 3 stories. Let's listen to the first.
Birthday. Today is Fred's birthday. He is 6 years old. Later, his friends are coming to his party. They will eat cake and play games.
After each story, there are several questions. Play the audio or read out the question yourself, and then mark the child's response.
Why is today a special day for Fred?
As before, there's guidance on acceptable answers available. Moving on to Test 3, Receptive Vocabulary. This tests their ability to match the words they hear to pictures on the screen. As the icons indicate, this test involves both looking and listening, so you'll need to show them the screen.
I'm going to show you some pictures on the screen. The pictures will be in fours. While you look at the pictures, you will hear a word. You have to press the picture that matches the word. If you need to hear the word again, ask and we can play it again. Listen carefully to the first word. Yo-yo.
You can ask the child to point to the correct image so you can select it, or you can let them select the correct image themselves. This test is marked automatically.
Shell. Balloon. Mountain.
There are 23 sets of images. You'll notice that some of the pictures look like the target word, for example, that a volcano looks similar to a mountain, or sound like the target word, fountain sounds like mountain. But there's only one correct answer, and in this case, that's the mountain. The final test is sentence repetition, another listening test. This assesses a child's understanding of sentence structure and meaning.
I'm going to play you some sentences. After each sentence, I want you to repeat it back to me. I want to find out how much you can remember. Listen carefully to the first one and then repeat exactly what you hear. Birds fly.
The test starts with very simple sentences, but they get longer and more complex.
I help Mum. The field is full of flowers.
Keep an ear out for common mistakes such as substitution, a field is full of flowers, or omission or change of word order, all of which should be marked incorrect. There's 14 sentences in all, then you've reached the end of the assessment. There's a nice little confetti animation to say well done, and you can press the button to upload the scores to OxEdAssessment.com. If you're not online, the data will be saved on the device and you can upload it later. Now let's sign into the OxEd website, OxEdAssessment.com, and find the record for the pupil we assessed. If we click on their Assessments tab, we'll see the results for their LanguageScreen assessment, which are available as soon as you upload the scores. These are presented as a table and a graph, along with helpful written feedback which highlights if a child would benefit from intervention and can be used to support educational health and care plans. You can see the raw scores for each test, the number of correct answers, but more importantly, their standard scores, which have been adjusted for their age based on a database of over 500,000 assessments. These range from 65 to 135, with 100 being the average score, and provide a more meaningful picture of a child's reading abilities. We provide standard scores for all 4 tests, but the one to focus on is their total standard score, which provides an overall view of their language ability. This imaginary child got a total standard score of 65, the lowest possible, which we've marked as a concern, hence her score is coloured red on the graph. You may find the percentile score helpful, another way of looking at the same information. This child has a percentile score of 1, which places them in the bottom 1% of children of their age. For children like this one, we recommend the NELI program, which has been shown through randomised controlled trials to improve children's language skills by 3 to 5 months, as well as their behaviour. Studies show that the gains in language and early word reading are still seen 2 years later, a remarkable result. When you've assessed your class, you can run a report by clicking on the Assessment Reports tab. Just select Report Type, LanguageScreen and the date range and click Generate Report. It takes just a few seconds to arrive. There's a Download PDF button to get a print-friendly version. Here's an example. The report begins with useful information explaining the assessments and how the standardised scoring works. Then we have a summary for each year group with traffic light symbols or RAG ratings to highlight the children whose scores indicate they could do with additional support through programs such as NELI. Then the feedback for each pupil is shown, 1 pupil per page, with a helpful explanation of the tests and how to interpret the scores in the small print. so the page can be shared with parents if you choose. You can easily mark the children who have been selected for the NELI programme. This will then show on their LanguageScreen reports and will serve as a helpful record of which children have received targeted support as they move up through the school. After the intervention, it is important to reassess the children who took part in the intervention so you can review their progress. Perhaps more importantly, we highly recommend that you assess all children in the class at the end of the year so you can see how all of them are developing, not just those who you had concerns about at the start of the year. This way you can ensure you know which children need more support as they move into a new academic year. Teachers tell us this is invaluable information and a fantastic way to get to know the language ability of individuals that need additional support, as well as to compare the wider class to national benchmarks. You can use LanguageScreen to track the development of your pupils' language skills as they move through primary school. If you also assess them with our ReadingScreen app, you can find out where their combined scores place them on the DfE-endorsed Simple View of Reading graph, so you can ensure you direct the right support to the children who need it most. That's our quick guide to LanguageScreen. Look out for guides on our other assessment apps, ReadingScreen and MathScreen.